Welcome back to the Creating a Community Animal Disaster Plan Toolkit. Let's move on to step 2, forming a collaborative community planning team. In step 1, we talked about the animal expertise your community already has. As Americans, we are animal lovers, with an estimated 65% of American households having one or more pets. In addition, our communities are filled with individuals who show dogs and livestock, utilize animals in sports or competition, or rescue and shelter homeless animals. We have animal-centric businesses that retail pet food and supplies, bathe and groom dogs, and provide veterinary care. The good news is that generally, our communities are rich in people with animal expertise of all kinds. When you begin to build your collaborative community planning team, it's essential to find and incorporate these active animal stakeholders. It's also important to realize that there are individuals who already have formal duties assigned to them in terms of animal disaster planning and response. Your local emergency manager is responsible for all emergency planning, and other governmental or nonprofit agencies may be authorized as the leads for animal planning and response. As you begin your planning process, it's essential to start with emergency management and these identified authorities, as well as bringing in a core group of essential animal stakeholders. The agencies and departments in these formal roles may differ from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Start with your local emergency manager. Ask for a copy of your community's EOP and review it closely to determine what individuals, agencies, or stakeholders might already be incorporated into the plan. If your local emergency operations plan already addresses animal disaster planning, who does it identify in key roles? Make sure they are a part of your collaborative team. As you move forward, it's essential that you are working closely with emergency management and any agencies or organizations that have statutory authority in animal planning and response, such as animal control or law enforcement. Add in other members of your core planning team from stakeholder groups with a strong interest in the well-being of the animals in your community. To illustrate this, let's look at a short case study of a small community who put together a collaborative team to develop their animal disaster planning. They began by first forming a small core planning team of emergency management, local agencies with formal animal disaster roles and responsibilities, and additional members who were responsible for critical needs such as county facilities, and with essential local knowledge such as a local veterinarian, a county extension agent, and the president of the existing community animal response team or CART, as well as the local Red Cross shelter manager. This core planning group was kept purposefully small, with just 5 to 8 participants, in order to build a framework for a larger planning effort. So what did this core planning team do? Well, first they collected and studied data regarding the demographics of their community. In this case, it was a largely suburban community with some significant facilities that could require special planning. Because the participants came from essential disciplines from local government and the community, they could provide the information needed to estimate general pet populations and the populations of pet-owning citizens with access needs. They also created a gap analysis for their community in terms of animal disaster response. In step 3, we'll discuss in more detail how you go about developing these pet population estimates and creating a gap analysis for your community. This core team also provided commentary on the overall roles and responsibilities of the individuals and agencies who would be identified as key functions in the animal disaster plan. They also provided information about existing standard operation procedures in the jurisdiction and provided all of this to the people who were tasked with compiling and writing the initial draft of the plan. Once that initial draft was created, the core planning team then actively recruited a broader range of animal stakeholders in their community to create an expanded planning team. This expanded planning team consisted of 10 to 20 members who could foreseeably be impacted in the event of a disaster affecting animals and their owners, not only in the immediate community, but also in neighboring communities. This expanded team not only brought different perspectives to the original planning concepts, but also provided additional suggestions for improvement. For instance, the core team had designated their county fairgrounds as their emergency animal shelter. The expanded team asks the question, what if your fairgrounds isn't available or is in the path of the disaster? Not only did this discussion generate a discussion about alternative in-county locations, but ultimately it created a mutual aid agreement between their county and a neighboring county where each county fairgrounds agreed to be the backup location for the other if needed. Who will you invite to your planning process will differ depending on the makeup and needs of your community. Are you a mostly rural community? Are you a highly urban community? Are you a mixture of the two? Depending on your community's makeup, your own core and extended planning teams will differ. And there's no right or wrong way to select your animal planning stakeholders for this process. However, a real key to success for your planning team is to find and solicit the participation of people who are passionate about their animals, as they become more likely to also be committed and fully engaged in the disaster planning process. Where do you find those passionate animal people? Step 2 in the toolkit gives you a lengthy checklist to start from. Then look around your community to find other stakeholders you might have missed. When you really think about all the ways people engage with animals in your community, you'll be surprised at how long your list becomes. Not only is it important to identify those stakeholders who can be a source of committed, engaged members of your planning team, but also look for the ways that these individuals form themselves into groups and organizations. Look for groups and organizations with established relationships, networks, and communication channels. Because they have already established these channels, they can get the word out to their constituency far faster than you could if you had to develop these relationships and channels yourself. Not only do they have the ability to push out and take in information for you, they are the hosts or participants in many of the animal events in your community that bring in unaffiliated but equally passionate animal advocates. These events can be a great place to recruit interested individuals, not only for your initial planning process, but also as longer-term CART and EOC volunteers. We'll talk more about that in step 5. The benefit of gathering the animal stakeholders in your community to assist with this effort is that they can help you gather the important information you need to create a realistic plan that is customized to the unique needs of your community. For instance, what hazards in your community should you plan for? Beyond the risks and hazards that might be readily apparent, like tornadoes or floods, or a large boarding kennel that needs to be planned for, you may have unexpected areas to deal with, like the sudden emergence of an animal hoarder who needs evacuation during a disaster. We'll examine risks and hazards more closely in step 3, identifying the risks and hazards in your community. Your animal stakeholders can also help you make estimates of the species, types, and numbers of animals you need to plan for. Perhaps your community has an active dog breeding industry. Your animal stakeholders can help you identify not only the locations of these breeding facilities, but also the expected numbers of animals on site at any given time. And finally, your stakeholders are your best source of knowledge about what capabilities you have in your community to assist during a disaster. Do you already have a CART team? If so, how many trained volunteers does the team have? What equipment do they have? Or perhaps there is no CART at all. Either way, you need to know what does or doesn't exist for capabilities and make sure your plan addresses the reality of your community situation. Finally, your animal stakeholders and their organizations will help you determine who the leaders are in your community of animal stakeholders. Make sure you work closely with these leaders, as they are often influential in their communities and can be a great help to you as long as they are sure that you have their interests in mind. Community leaders need to trust that planners will support the work of the community and not dictate solutions for their individual issues. If you establish that trust and good relationship, they will absolutely be the key to assuring that you have the critical people, information, and resources you need to develop, write, and implement a successful animal disaster plan and response capability. So let's recap. Your animal disaster planning will benefit from a whole community approach. You have a wide variety of stakeholders who are interested and even passionate about pets and animals who can bring their expertise to the table. First, form a small core planning team of essential stakeholders who can put together a framework that meets the standards of local authorities. Next, invite in more stakeholders and expand your planning team to flesh out the details and elements of your animal disaster planning. As you begin to understand the resources in your community, you also need to begin to understand what the risks and hazards are for your community. We'll examine the risks and hazards for your community next in step 3.